Donald Trump, a man whose political rise was fueled by relentless populism, has long relied on the fervent loyalty of his supporters, particularly those who make up the heart of his MAGA base. For years, he positioned himself as the voice of the disenfranchised, a fighter who would stop at nothing to make America great again. Yet in a jaw-dropping turn of events, the former president has now publicly distanced himself from the very people who heeded his calls most ardently. In an explosive town hall interview with Univision, Trump shockingly claimed that his supporters did not come to Washington, D.C. on January 6th because of him, but because they believed the 2020 election was rigged. With this single statement, Trump effectively threw his MAGA base under the bus, blaming them for the violent insurrection at the U.S. Capitol and denying any responsibility for the chaos that ensued. In doing so, Trump not only disavowed the loyalty of his supporters, but also implicated them in a disastrous event that resulted in federal indictments, jail sentences, and the tarnishing of American democracy. This stunning admission from Trump represents a pivotal moment in his political narrative, raising significant questions about his integrity, his manipulation of the truth, and his willingness to sacrifice his followers when convenient. In this comprehensive analysis, we will delve deep into Trump's public statements, the reactions of his supporters, and the overwhelming evidence that contradicts his recent claims. From his infamous December 19th tweet to the voices of MAGA protesters themselves, we will present a case so damning that it leaves no room for doubt. Donald Trump knowingly misled his supporters and, when it suited him, abandoned them to face the legal consequences of January 6th alone. The Univision town hall bombshell, Trump's denial. The story begins with Trump's appearance at a Univision town hall in which he was confronted about his role in the January 6th insurrection. When asked why he waited so long to act as his supporters stormed the Capitol, Trump offered an astonishing defense. "They didn't come because of me. They came because of the election." He insisted that the crowd was motivated solely by their belief that the 2020 election had been rigged against him, not by any direct instruction from him. This statement is as baffling as it is false. For months leading up to January 6th, Trump repeatedly claimed that the election was stolen, undermining trust in the democratic process and stoking the anger of his base. His infamous December 19th tweet was a direct call to arms. Big protest in D.C. on January 6th. Be there. Will be wild. Trump's rhetoric, both in public speeches and social media posts, made it clear that he wanted his supporters to descend upon the Capitol in droves to stop the steal. So why, after leading his followers to believe they were fighting for their country and their president, did Trump now claim they came for their own reasons? The answer lies in his need to escape responsibility for the violence that erupted on January 6th, a day that left lawmakers in fear for their lives, led to multiple deaths, and resulted in more than 1,000 criminal charges. Trump's own legal challenges, including multiple federal and state-level indictments, have likely made him desperate to distance himself from the insurrection he incited. The MAGA testimony. His supporters speak for themselves. To fully grasp the magnitude of Trump's betrayal, we must turn to the words of his own supporters. On January 6th, thousands of them arrived in Washington, D.C., proudly wearing MAGA hats, waving Trump flags, and chanting his name. They were not there by accident or coincidence. They came because they believed, as Trump had told them, that their country was being stolen and that they needed to act to save it. One supporter, speaking at the Capitol on the day of the riot, was clear. President Trump called patriots nationwide to be in our nation's capital to fight for him, and that's exactly what I did. I answered the call. Another protester echoed this sentiment, stating, "Trump's not your normal politician. He's one of us. He won. He did win. If you don't see issues, you're an idiot." These individuals were not confused about why they were in Washington. They were there because their president asked them to be. Even during the chaos of the Capitol breach, supporters carried signs that read, "Stop the steal," a slogan directly linked to Trump's repeated, unfounded claims of widespread voter fraud. They chanted Trump's name, waved flags bearing his face, and wore shirts emblazoned with his slogans. The insurrectionists who violently attacked police officers and broke into the Capitol building were clear about their motivations. They believed they were carrying out the will of Donald Trump. But in the Univision town hall, Trump's denial of responsibility was as blatant as it was shocking. By asserting that his supporters acted on their own initiative, Trump not only absolved himself of blame, but also shifted the burden of accountability onto his followers. This strategic move was not only deceptive, but also profoundly hypocritical, given the numerous public statements Trump made in the months leading up to January 6th, urging his base to fight like hell to overturn the election. The December 19th tweet, Trump's direct call to action. If there is any doubt about Trump's role in mobilizing his supporters for January 6th, one need only look at his December 19th tweet, which read, "Big protest in D.C. on January 6th. Be there. Will be wild." This tweet, sent weeks before the Capitol attack, was the spark that ignited the fire of insurrection. It was a direct message to his base, urging them to descend upon the nation's capital in what he promised would be a momentous and consequential event. This tweet was not a one-off statement. It was part of a broader narrative that Trump had been pushing for months. As early as November 2020, Trump began spreading the false claim that the election had been stolen from him. In speech after speech, rally after rally, and tweet after tweet, he told his supporters that their votes had been discounted and that the future of the country was at stake. Trump's supporters took this message to heart. In the weeks leading up to January 6th, right-wing forums and social media platforms lit up with chatter about the wild protest in D.C. Groups like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers organized transportation to the event, while others planned to bring weapons and tactical gear. Trump's words were not only a call to action, they were interpreted as a green light for violence. Trump's lies, months of falsehoods about the election. One of the most damning pieces of evidence against Trump is the fact that he knowingly spread false information about the 2020 election. Despite being told repeatedly by his own advisors and legal team that there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud, Trump continued to claim that the election had been stolen. He amplified baseless conspiracy theories about voting machines, dead voters, and fraudulent ballots, all while filing dozens of frivolous lawsuits that were swiftly dismissed by courts across the country. Even after the Electoral College certified Joe Biden as the winner of the election, Trump refused to concede. In a December 2nd speech, he declared, "This election was rigged. Everybody knows it, but we're going to keep fighting. We are not going to let them get away with it." This kind of rhetoric, repeated over and over again, convinced his supporters that the election results were illegitimate and that drastic action was necessary to prevent Biden from being sworn in as president. It was this relentless drumbeat of lies that led to the events of January 6. Trump's supporters did not independently come to the conclusion that the election was stolen. They believed it because their president told them so. Trump's claim during the Univision town hall that his supporters came to Washington because of the election, not because of him, is not only disingenuous, it is a blatant lie. The election and Trump are inextricably linked in the minds of his supporters, and they came to the Capitol to fight for him. The aftermath, Trump's betrayal and the legal fallout. In the days and weeks following the January 6th insurrection, Trump's betrayal of his supporters became even more apparent. As the country watched in horror as rioters smashed windows, assaulted police officers, and stormed the halls of Congress, Trump was reportedly watching it all unfold on television. According to multiple accounts, he was initially pleased with the chaos, believing that it demonstrated the strength of his movement. But as the situation spiraled out of control and public outrage grew, Trump was forced to distance himself from the violence. Instead of taking responsibility for the actions of his supporters, Trump threw them under the bus. In a video released on January 7th, Trump condemned the violence and called for an orderly transition of power, stating, "You do not represent our country, and to those who broke the law, you will pay." This sudden reversal shocked many of his most ardent supporters, who felt abandoned by the man they had risked their freedom for. The legal consequences of January 6th have been severe. Over 1,000 people have been charged in connection with the Capitol riot, with many facing lengthy prison sentences. Meanwhile, Trump himself is facing multiple criminal indictments, including charges related to his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. One of the key elements of the Department of Justice's case against Trump is the claim that he knowingly spread false information about the election in an effort to defraud the American people. Perhaps the most damning evidence against Trump comes from his own words. In an interview with ABC News on January 12, 2021, Trump was asked if he felt responsible for the events of January 6th. His response was chilling. "I don't take any responsibility at all." This refusal to accept accountability, even in the face of overwhelming evidence, speaks volumes about Trump's character and his willingness to betray the very people who supported him most fervently. Donald Trump's shocking admission during the Univision town hall represents a turning point in his relationship with the MAGA base. For years, Trump cultivated an image of loyalty and dedication to his supporters, positioning himself as a champion of the people. Yet when faced with the consequences of his actions, he abandoned them without hesitation. In blaming his supporters for the events of January 6th, Trump not only betrayed their trust, but also revealed the true nature of his political strategy, a willingness to manipulate and discard anyone who stands in the way of his personal ambitions. The fallout from Trump's betrayal will undoubtedly be felt for years to come. Many of his supporters now find themselves facing legal repercussions for their role in the Capitol riot, while Trump continues to evade accountability. As the 2024 election approaches, it remains to be seen whether the MAGA base will continue to stand by Trump, or if they will finally realize that the man they once saw as their savior is, in fact, willing to throw them under the bus to save himself.